There are certain dark parts of our own government I call personally the shadow government. That's what we'll be talking about. Some call it the deep state, and the deep state does exist. What my point is, coming from the CIA, is the deep state and the shadow government are not the same thing. They're used interchangeably, but the shadow government and the deep state are not the same entity. They are joined together in a matrix, but they are not one and the same, and I'll explain how that is, why that is. And it's important to know that. They're both a threat to our Constitution. I come from the belly of the beast, the deep secret inner workings of the government that no one sees on the outside, the massive system of secrecy and the matrix of secret intelligence agencies that are now manipulating our elected officials behind the scenes. There's a serious threat to our democracy and our constitutional republic by the shadow government and its associated deep state. In a few years, we may no longer have a constitutional republic. Some people think that we already do not have a constitutional republic, and I, sadly, personally happen to be one of those, that the Constitution is over, except for those of us that still adhere to it as the supreme law of the land. The government has superseded that in a gross fashion, and we're going to talk about that in detail this evening. If you could please hold your questions till the end, and I will be available at the back table when we are done. And I'll answer any questions that I can. I've met some of you personally that I've been talking with online, and some folks from previous speeches, so it's so good to have you here. And we're live streaming to a lot of folks. So welcome to everyone that's watching this tonight. We hope that will cause a bang. So, all right. I'm going to focus on the shadow government, the unconstitutional power of government secrecy. I call it the tyranny of secrecy. Our government has such a powerful, large matrix system of secrecy that it has literally taken over our elected government in a very complex fashion. They've been doing this for almost 60 years, and they've got it perfected. I always like to start my talks with this because it is so important. The Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land. It's not a document of philosophy. It's not a written piece of ideology that's just a nice way for a country to do business or an ideology to follow. The Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land. It supersedes the entire criminal justice system that we have underneath it. And that's important to understand, because if someone violates the Constitution, they are breaking the law. It's a felony. Okay? So if the government or any government agency violates the Constitution, like the Fourth Amendment, for example, they're breaking the law. That's a felony. That applies to citizens, and it applies to the government also. So if we remember that, we understand that, we're going to want to hold some people in Washington accountable for some of the things that are going on there. I mentioned that the shadow government and the deep state are two different entities, although they are joined together in this vast matrix that we see in Washington, D.C. and beyond. The deep state is the secret government, all of the secret intelligence agencies that are functioning in the dark behind the scenes. That is the shadow government. And it binds much of the deep state with secrecy, secret oaths, secrecy agreements, and other things that bind a lot of large contractors and others from saying anything about what they see. The deep state, however, is the system, and you can see I put a $ on system. The deep state is a system behind government. The military-industrial complex, I'll be talking about that. The currency of the shadow government is the power of secrecy, fear, and intimidation. That's the shadow government. I know because I was a part of that. I was a counterintelligence officer, interviewer, and that's how it works. The currency of the deep state is money, power, and greed. So they're two different things. They're joined together, which I'll explain, but they're two different things that function with two different systems of control that are manipulating our government behind the scenes. Let's look at this. I want to show you all the size, the power, and the extent of the shadow government, or the secret government. This is the size. Each organization that I'm about to show you up here functions in secrecy and is bound by secret oaths from saying anything about what they see. When I was in there, I was in there during the Iran-Contra scandal and some other things, and you cannot talk about anything that you see, even if it's illegal or unconstitutional, because there's a system to systematically destroy you if you do. So, you remember the Council on Foreign Relations, established in 1921, came largely from the banking elite, the Morgans, the Rothschilds, and others, formed the Council on Foreign Relations. Council on Foreign Relations, eventually with the same members of the CFR, created the CIA. I think 21 CIA directors have all been members of the Council on Foreign Relations. That is an unconstitutional organization, and it has been since its founding in 1921. I'll get into that. And this is, I'm taking a library of information and research and trying to distill this down into as short as I can get it. So there's a lot of stuff here, but we'll try to keep it simple. Then the Council on Foreign Relations in the beginning and the CIA had a direct established contract with the mainstream media. Philip and Catherine Graham of the Washington Post were members of the Council on Foreign Relations and directly connected to the CIA and directly connected to the CIA and CFR's program of pumping information into the news media for propaganda of the American people. And do you think that still continues today? There's no doubt about it. I will prove it later on. Most people will say, that passed away in 1976 with the end of Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird did not end. A lot of you shaking your heads, you know what I'm talking about. It's still here. Mainstream media is involved directly. Then you've got, of course, our beloved NSA. I know a couple of senior NSA whistleblowers. We tend to be friends when you're doing what we do because it's a small circle of riskies. And they've got a lot of things to say about NSA domestic surveillance and spying. So the NSA was created not by Congress, but via executive order outside of the Constitution, which most people don't know. It's got the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or the FISA Court, which is a secret Supreme Court that functions outside of Congress and outside of the American people, and nobody knows what it does except grant warrants to domestically spy on U.S. citizens, which it has done in a gross fashion, as most of us know, with the NSA domestic surveillance program. More on that later. Silicon Valley now is directly connected to NSA. That's the way that the government does it, the CIA and the NSA. They approach Silicon Valley companies. I was in a military-industrial complex. I was a program manager. They are always looking for big multi-million-dollar contracts. That's how you survive. That's how you stay alive. So the NSA, the CIA comes to them and says, hey, we got a $5-10 million contract. You sign up, we'll give this to you, and you can hook into Yahoo and Google and everybody else. And, it's worth, in this case, about $500 million total. So your average program manager says, I'll take it. And they sign up. What the CIA and the NSA do then, because I executed thousands of these, they make you sign the piece of paper. Okay, you got this multi-million-dollar contract, but you cannot have access to anything until you sign the secrecy oath or the secrecy agreement with the CIA and NSA, which threatens you with administrative action, termination, or prison. If you mention anything connected with that operation, you can go to jail or worse. That's how they do it. Joint Special Operations Command is the President's, people don't know this exists, it's the President's private army. The President of the United States can send the secret JSOC out into any country, and I think they're out there right now, into any country to conduct a special secret operation against that group of people to neutralize or whatever needs to be done in secret. That's the JSOC. The Director of National Intelligence, 17 federal agencies made up of tens of thousands of people are engaged in the shadow or secret government. 17 different intelligence agencies are part of the shadow government. It's massive. I'll show you the size here in a moment. Department of Homeland Security has its own secret branches. Department of State has its own secret branches. You remember when Secretary Hillary Clinton secretly ran guns into Libya, Benghazi, without anybody knowing about it, without Congress knowing about it? Those guns were given to the Free Syrian Army in Benghazi and eventually up outside of Syria. The Free Syrian Army, claiming to be moderate Islamic rebels, many of them morphed into, guess who? ISIS. ISIS is now using U.S. tanks, U.S. weapons, and trained U.S. fighters, some of which they got some of the weapons from Iraq when we bailed out of Iraq. But a lot of ISIS branched out of the Free Syrian Army, and they have a lot of our weapons that they're using that we sent over there. That was conducted in secret. Did anybody here vote for that? Did anybody here vote for arming the Free Syrian Army in Syria with weapons? I don't see any hands. I never do, because we didn't. We didn't even know what was going on. That is the shadow government. Defense Intelligence Agency, another branch of intelligence, were actually caught setting up a program to gain informants inside the United States to have U.S. citizens spy on other U.S. citizens. They were caught by Congress. The program was shut down. They were directly involved in the torture program, which was more than waterboarding, by the way. People died. It was a lot worse than just pouring water on people's heads. It was pretty bad. I think they're still under investigation for some of the things that they did to an extreme in the torture program. National Reconnaissance Office. All the satellites that are around the Earth, the spy satellites, the technology of which would blow your mind. So I'm just not going there. Let's just say that's another branch of the shadow government that's up there circulating around. And the technology that is out there, all the way down to nanotechnology, is mind-blowing. The National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, most people don't know this, but they approached Google, and they assisted with a contract and paying a lot of money to help Google set up Google Earth. So, and we all know what Google Earth, they can come down and see what kind of tomatoes I'm growing if they want to. So the NGA, do you think that the federal government has a hand in Google Earth and coming down and looking at your house and your barn? They helped create it. So is there any individual privacy anymore? It's gone. It's dead. What they can do is incredible. And it increases by the quarter. National Geospatial Intelligence, the FBI, warrantless search program, where they can break, Robert Mueller authorized this, where they can break into your house without a warrant, search your house, and leave without you ever knowing they were there. Gross violation of the Fourth Amendment. I'll try to keep this short, but Robert Mueller testified under oath, fabricated 3 times. They only broke into Americans' house 47 times. They came back and said, well, sir, we happen to have evidence that it was probably more like 2,000. Now he's under oath. Oh, okay, it was 2,000. Or, sir, we have evidence that it's even more than that. Well, they got him up to 4,000 times that they'd broken into Americans' homes without a warrant. Finally, when they got him above that, they said, Director Mueller, you're not being straight with us. How many times has the FBI broken into Americans' homes? If you can imagine, his response was this: I don't remember. Okay. Do we buy that one? I don't think so. Under oath. We'll get into that a little bit later. So here we've got the shadow or secret government. I will get into the magnitude of this thing, the power of this thing, the unconstitutionality of this thing, and it is mind-blowing. That's just the shadow government. That's not the deep state. This is the deep state. The shadow government is connected to the deep state, and it binds much of it through secrecy oaths, secret contracts, and secret agreements that they are bound by life with. For example, Lockheed Martin and other companies have CIA contracts. They're bound by the secrecy oath. They can never talk about what they're doing. I'll talk about some of it because I got it from open source, and I know how to do that. So, because I have to be real careful. I have to watch everything I say. This is the deep state. It does exist. There were some of us, a few of us, that were talking about the deep state 5 years ago when it wasn't cool, and no one would say a thing about it. Now, if you listen to any talk show now, they're all talking about the deep state because it's kind of safe. Everybody's talking about the deep state, but they're claiming, well, they're Obama holdovers in the deep state, and that's really what it is. That's a smokescreen. The deep state and shadow government go back for every presidential administration going back to 1947. So it's not Obama holdovers, and I'll show you why in a moment. It is massive. The military-industrial complex, Eisenhower, when he gave that speech, originally called it the military-industrial congressional complex, because Congress is tied in so deeply with the military-industrial complex, it's disgusting. But they convinced him to take Congress out of the military-industrial complex speech that he gave. Congress is very much involved in the military complex and the deep state, and you'll see in a moment why they promise us one thing and then they vote on something exactly the opposite. The lobbyists in Washington, D.C., I think spend $4.8 million a year lobbying the Congress and the Senate to get their way. We'll call it the MIC just for short. Wall Street, directly connected to the deep state at the hip, and it is so connected to the Treasury now, they're almost like business partners. And a lot of Wall Street has billions in offshore accounts that nobody knows about, connected directly to the Department of Treasury, which has a secret database on us, by the way. Most people don't know that. Treasury has its own secret database. It has opened the back door for the NSA and the CIA to come in and look at financial information on us. Just found that out. Foreign lobbyists, Israel and Saudi Arabia, I'm not making a comment on either one, but they might as well have a Senate or congressional seat. The amount of power and influence they have over our elected officials is phenomenal. And the millions and millions of dollars that they contribute is also phenomenal. Defense contractors bound by the deep state. Intelligence contractors. I will get into these. There's something that I call the secret intelligence complex, industrial complex. We've got the military industrial complex. We've got the secret intelligence industrial complex, just as big, just as powerful, nobody knows about. We'll talk about that. The Federal Reserve. You could call this the economic shadow government. If anybody has studied the Federal Reserve, my gosh. And when you know how that thing operates and what it's doing, it took the freedom, the constitutional freedom economic of Americans away in 1913, that far back. It is run by international bankers in secret. It is not a federal agency. It is a private bank made up of international banks that run our entire economic policy. So this is an economic shadow government all by itself. But it's more of a part of the deep state because it's economic. From the Council on Foreign Relations came the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. Do you see globalism happening here? You mentioned the New World Order, and everybody freaks out. It's a conspiracy theory. And you will just set that aside because there is a global economic order with these going on right now outside of our Constitution, running American economics now. You want to call it the New World Order. You want to call it the globalist order. You want to call it what Susan Rice and Barack Obama called it, the new international world order. You can call it whatever you want. But this global order exists, and it is running our country. More on that coming up. Now, I tried my level best to distill all these volumes of things down to try to make it simple how this happened. The global banking elite, the Morgans, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, way back with Cecil Rhodes, going all the way back to South Africa, started secret societies because they wanted a global economic world order. In other words, they wanted economic rulership of the world because that way they'd bring world peace and there'd no longer be national division. The odd thing is the majority of them were engaged in the occult, some of them very deeply.
For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be. Yea, thou shalt diligently consider his place, and it shall not be. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. The wicked plotteth against the just, and gnasheth upon him with his teeth. The Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming. The wicked have drawn out the sword, and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy, and to slay such as be of upright conversation. Their sword shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken. A little that a righteous man hath is better than the riches of many wicked. For the arms of the wicked shall be broken, but the Lord upholdeth the righteous. The Lord knoweth the days of the upright, and their inheritance shall be forever. They shall not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they shall be satisfied. But the wicked shall perish, and the enemies of the Lord shall be as the fat of lambs. They shall consume, and to smoke shall they consume away. The wicked borroweth and payeth not again, but the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. For such as be blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed of him shall be cut off.